Hello and welcome to Freedom Electric Marine's series simply titled, Are You a Kayak Fisherman or a Twin Troller Fisherman? The purpose of this series is not to attack the fishing kayak community or fishing kayaks. The purpose of this series is to help fishermen looking for solo fishing adventures find the right fishing platform for their needs and desires. The Twin Troller is a one-man or two-man fishing platform that has two electric trolling motors recessed in its hull, operates in 6 to 8 inches of water, and offers a 100% hands-free, 100% variable speed, zero turn radius, can't tip it over fishing experience. Although very similar in use and application, the Twin Troller fishing experience is very different than the kayak fishing experience. In this series, we poke a little fun at the kayak fishing experience. To Twin Troller fishermen, it's kind of funny the idea of paddling being a critical component to fishing. To kayak fishermen, they may find the Twin Troller fishing experience a little funny, or too easy not having to paddle at all. And that's okay. We don't mean any harm to the kayak community. They are simply different fishing platforms for different fishing experiences. Here's a quick look at some of the series topics. Episode 1. Basic rules for kayak fishing. Episode 2. Passion for paddling. Episode 3. We don't need no stinking anchors. Episode 4. Pedals equals fishing. And Episode 5. Kayak fishing versus twin troller fishing. Like I said earlier, the purpose of this video is not to attack the fishing kayak community. The purpose of this series is to help you determine whether you're a kayak fisherman or a twin troller fisherman. We hope you enjoy the series and ultimately find the best fishing platform for your needs. When researching kayak fishing, I decided to look into the most basic beginner aspects of kayak fishing. As a beginner, what do I need to know? I came across a site with some basic rules to follow when fishing from a kayak. I'll give you the top 3. Now, I have to say something before I read them to you. I did not make these up. I really got them from a real kayak fishing website. Rule 1. Dress to swim. Always dress with the expectation of swimming. This not only means wearing your PFD, but also clothes that'll do their job without getting in your way when they are wet. I'll sometimes wear this when I go fishing. I've never considered swimming in this. Do you think I can swim in this? Rule 2. Rig to flip. Ensure that everything is secured onto the kayak and it will float. Everything that shouldn't get wet should be secured in a plastic bag. Okay, I need to make a list. What should I put in a plastic bag? My car keys. Gotta put the car keys in the bag. My wallet, or at least my driver's license, and some money. What about my phone? If I flip over and I need some help, I may need my phone. Can I talk on my phone through a plastic bag? I don't know, I've never done that before. Rule 3. Your body follows where your head goes. Try to keep upright at all times with your head centered over the kayak. Once you master this trick, you will stay comfortably on top of your kayak no matter how much it rolls. I've seen people fall in the water simply because they leaned out of the kayak to look around. Okay, now I'm in trouble. That is going to be a real problem for me. As some of you may know, you may have even seen my testimonial video. My twin troller is the world's best camera boat. I shoot videos of myself, videos of others, and I'm always looking around. Okay, rewind. I need to find a plastic bag for my camera, my tripod, and my drone. Now that doesn't float. So there it is, some basic rules for kayak fishing. Before you go, I'd like to give you some basic rules for twin troller fishing. Rule number 1, dress to impress. When you're out fishing in a twin troller, you really never know when someone's going to take your picture. Now keep in mind, it's not really your picture they want. Well, in my case, it might be. But in your case, probably not. Also keep in mind, while you're out on the water, fishermen will come up to you and say, "Where's the trolling motor? How are you steering the boat?" Then you'll say, "It's not trolling motor, it's trolling motors. There's two and they're recessed in the hull." That's when you get the puzzled look on their face. Rule number 2, rig to fish. Don't worry about your car keys, wallet, phone, camera, tripod, or drone. You won't be flipping over in a twin troller. There's really not much else to say about that rule. Rule number 3, get gas on the way. I know the twin troller is an electric boat, so why do you need to get gas? Well, if you have an outboard like I do, you may want to fill up, but the real reason is to make friends. Let me explain. When I get gas towing the twin troller, often someone will walk up to me and ask, "What's this? That's a neat looking boat." If you have the courage to say it, say, "Yeah, it's a great boat," but if you want to see why it's great, you'll have to get on your knees. If they don't hit you, they'll look under the boat, see the 2 recessed trolling motors, and get up grinning because they've never seen anything like it. In most cases, you're likely to make a friend, and that's a good thing. Some of you may be yelling at your screen, what kind of title is that? Passion for paddling. This series is supposed to be about kayak fishing. Well, from the research I've done, paddling is a big part of kayak fishing. And if you don't have a passion for paddling, you may not like kayak fishing. And remember, that's what this series is about, helping you determine if you like kayak fishing or twin troller fishing. Now for some paddling tips. First, pick the right paddle. Don't go cheap. Here's a quote from an expert kayak fisherman. "Not all paddles are the same. Use good touring paddles with asymmetric blades rather than a general or white water paddle. It really is a good idea to get the best paddle you can afford, remembering that these high-tech lightweight models will reduce fatigue when paddling." Now this makes a lot of sense. Like I've said, I'm not a kayak fisherman, but I've had some long days fishing in my twin troller. After 10 hours of non-stop fishing, my hands get tired from fishing, not paddling. You can't fish with tired hands. I could see having a really good paddle being important considering all the paddling you're doing while kayak fishing. Next, practice proper technique. If you don't paddle properly, you could wear yourself out before you get your hook in the water. Here's some advice regarding the importance of technique. And once again, this is from an expert kayak fisherman. And while at first glance it may not look like having proper paddling form is that important to you as a fisherman, we're going to show you a couple of tricks that are really going to help you improve your paddling technique, which will also improve your effectiveness as a kayak fisherman. Here's where I came up with the title of this episode. This expert kayak fisherman is stating pretty clear, if you're not good at paddling, it will affect your ability to be a good kayak fisherman. Of course, this video series is not designed to get into the nuances of kayak paddling. This is simply an overview. If you want to learn more about paddling techniques, simply search kayak fishing paddling techniques. I'm sure you'll find lots of videos. Having a great paddle and using great technique is important, but here's a tip you better pay special attention to. Being a twin troller owner, before my kayak fishing research, I had no idea these things even existed. It's called the paddle leash. Once again, here's advice from an expert kayak fisherman. Paddle leash. When a fish is on, the last thing on your mind will be your paddle. Secure your paddle. We've all heard the term up the creek without a paddle. Avoid it. I can most certainly relate to this. While fishing in my twin troller, the last thing on my mind is my paddle. In a kayak, I'm not so sure. I think the last thing on my mind might be what I had for breakfast or what I might be having for dinner. If I just got done paddling for 30 minutes, secured all my stuff in plastic bags in case I tip over, got my fishing pole rigged, get my line in the water, then actually have a fish on the line that's pulling me further away from where I started, I think paddling back would be top of mind for me. But that's me. Regardless, I think you should take this advice. Catching a nice red is great. You can trust me on that one. Those of you who wonder whether you can fish saltwater with the twin troller, that is a beautiful redfish caught at a Mosquito Lagoon. Releasing it only to find your paddle is gone in a kayak, I don't see how that could be a good thing. I highly recommend getting a paddle leash if you are kayak fishing. The title of this episode is poking a little fun at kayak fishing, I must admit. The reason I am doing it is to show you one of the major differences between twin troller fishing and kayak fishing. Fishing in the wind is really not part of a kayak fisherman's life. However, fishing in a breeze is. An anchor is a critical accessory for kayak fishing, second only to a paddle. For that, watch episode 2. But once again, don't take my word for it, hear it from an expert kayak fisherman. If the forecast is calling for strong winds, you're probably better off leaving your kayak at home because you're going to spend 90% of your time fighting the wind and only 10% of the time fishing, if you're lucky. But on days of lighter winds, the wind will be more of a nuisance that you'll have to deal with. If you decide to fish windy conditions in a twin troller, it's really a non-issue. Personally, I don't own an anchor, and I've fished in 25-mile-per-hour winds before. However, if you're in a kayak, you're going to need something to keep you in one spot, unless you like uncontrolled drift fishing. Here are some recommendations, once again, from expert kayak fishermen. Many people will use anything heavy to serve as a kayak anchor, only to have it scoot across the bottom in adverse conditions. This can be dangerous, not to mention the damage it does to the bottom. The most common anchor used in the kayak fishing community is either a 1.5 pound or 3 pound folding anchor. This device is amazingly effective. It works by simply lying on its side and grabbing the bottom. I'm in complete agreement here. I also think the anchor is an amazingly simple and effective tool. Throw it in and bam, you stop moving. My problem is I don't like the idea of dropping in the anchor, pulling out the anchor, dropping in the anchor, pulling out the anchor. That would get a little old for me after a while. With my twin troller, I hold my location with my feet, utilizing the twin troller's in-hole propulsion system. For me, that's pretty simple and effective. Let's say you want to switch your anchor from bow to stern without getting out of the kayak. The solution is an ingenious device called an anchor trolley. Basically, this is an apparatus that runs the length of your kayak on one side. You run your anchor line through a ring in the rigging, and this will allow you to move the ring via the rigging to change the placement of your anchor. I was fishing on the Gulf Coast one time and I saw 2 kayak fishermen out there with me. The wind was blowing about 10 miles per hour, give or take. Their day was paddle, anchor, fish. Paddle, anchor, fish. Paddle, anchor, fish. You get the idea. This anchor trolley allowed them to drop the anchor at their side, then let the rope run to the back of the kayak. This held them in position while they fished. When they were done in an area, they pulled the anchor back into their kayak, paddled to the next location, and repeated the process. You might remember me saying in the last episode, if you're paddling, you're not fishing. Well, you could easily say if you're playing with anchors all day, you're not fishing. They were doing it all day. I don't know how many times. I was too busy fishing. This ingenious device simply sticks into the bottom and holds you in place. It can also be used through the scupper holes in your kayak. Some people use old golf clubs and even broken rods. The advantage of using a stakeout pole is convenience. You can easily stake out in a matter of seconds where it would take a few minutes to deploy an anchor. The obvious disadvantage is that it only works in relatively shallow water. Here's a great idea for both kayak fishing and twin troller fishing. I have heard of some twin troller guys using this. Like they said, simply mount some kind of ring on your boat, stick the pole through the hole and into the ground. Shazam, you're not moving. Pretty neat idea. If you don't want to stop completely, but you want to merely slow down, you need a drift chute. Once deployed, this device catches water, which slows you down. This is also effective if you're battling a large fish and need to apply some additional pressure. That drift chute is a neat idea. I remember when I was a kid, my dad would take me to drag races. I really liked the end of the race where they threw their chute. This is basically the same thing. Utilizing the twin troller's in-hole propulsion system, simply hit reverse on your pedals a little. It does the same thing. This whole idea of fishing in the wind isn't a unique problem for kayak fishing. You'll have this problem with any boat except a twin troller. Like I said before, with my twin troller, I hold my location with my feet utilizing the twin troller's in-hole propulsion. More about that in episodes 4 and 5. If you've watched the other videos in this series, this video will bring them all together. Why? Because this video takes this whole idea of a fishing kayak head on. In the other videos, we've talked about kayak fishing in general and some of the accessories that help you fish out of a kayak. In this video, we look at top-of-the-line fishing kayaks offered by kayak manufacturers. My claim is they are nothing more than marketing ploys. In my opinion, there is nothing about these top-of-the-line kayaks that would make them any more fishing kayaks than other kayaks with fishing accessories. I am not going to mention any specific kayak brands because this is not about comparing brands, but rather comparing styles or types of fishing platforms or boats. If you have done any type of fishing kayak searches, you will recognize what we are talking about. Two popular fishing kayak models use pedals to propel the kayak. One type turns a prop, the other uses a fin-type propulsion. My question is simple. What does that have to do with fishing? How does it help you fish? I give them credit for trying to use pedals. Hands can be used for propulsion, i.e. with a paddle, or they can be used for fishing, i.e. holding a fishing rod. I've never seen anyone hold a fishing rod with their feet. So it only makes sense feet should be used for some form of propulsion. Theoretically, I guess you could fish while pedaling a kayak, but practically, in reality, I just don't see it. To the extent pedaling lets you rest your hands from paddling, maybe you could call it a fishing kayak, but that's it. Even the so-called fishing kayaks come with or recommend having a paddle. Now let's talk about how the use of pedals can help you fish. With a twin troller, you have a pedal unit with two pedals that control two trolling motors recessed in the hull. We call it in-hull propulsion. This allows you to go forward, backwards, or turn in a complete circle without changing your position. Some people call this turning on a dime, or zero turn radius. The twin troller is a turn on a dime, zero turn radius fishing boat. You can do all this while fishing with your hands. It is 100% hands-free fishing. Once you get used to using the pedals, it truly becomes second nature. You actually end up fishing with your feet. As odd as that sounds, your feet are as involved as your hands positioning your lure for presentation. There is nothing like the twin troller anywhere at any price. One of the reasons people buy kayaks for fishing is the shallow draft. These top-of-the-line fishing kayaks don't have this, at least not with their high-tech propulsion systems in place. When you put this propulsion/pedal apparatus in the water, your draft triples or more. So 4-inch draft goes to 15 inches. How does that make it a fishing kayak? It just doesn't make sense to me. What if you're fishing saltwater flats in shallow water with grass below the surface? How do you pedal through that grass in a top-of-the-line fishing kayak? The twin troller has 6 to 8 inches draft during operation. That's what makes the in-hole propulsion system truly amazing. It goes through most of that stuff like a knife through butter. I would like to start this episode by saying using the term versus is really not accurate. It just sounds good in a title. A more fitting title might be kayak fishing or twin troller fishing. What are you looking for? In this video, I focus on the differences and similarities between the two. It is truly my desire you buy what's best for you. Freedom Electric Marine has no desire to sell someone a twin troller who doesn't want one. Twin troller owners love their boats, and we want to keep it that way. So let's get started with episode 5, kayak fishing versus twin troller fishing. What are the similarities? What do both fishing styles have in common? Make no mistake, twin troller fishing and kayak fishing give fishermen opportunities you don't get with a bigger boat. There are many reasons, but most of them can be summed up with 2 words: accessibility and maintenance. First, accessibility. Whether you're dropping into a small lake or inland saltwater flat, you could never do this in a bigger boat. Then there's the draft. With a shallow draft, you can go places big boats could never go. Accessibility is a huge draw for both fishing styles. Second, maintenance. This is another area these boats excel. The maintenance cost is near nothing. Included in maintenance, you have to consider storage. Storing a large boat can be costly. Storing a kayak or twin troller is easy. Maintenance cost, or should I say the lack of it, is a major draw for both. Now let's talk about some of the differences. I'm going to try and do this section with no bias. I simply want to state the differences based in reality, not fantasy. So here goes. In my introduction of this series, I mentioned Mount Everest. I said I'm sure it's a great adventure, but it's not on my list. I'm not suggesting kayaking is the same as climbing Mount Everest. However, to some, kayak fishing is about the adventure. If you want to fish in the ocean for sharks in a kayak, go right ahead. Don't do it in a twin troller. The twin troller is an inshore boat, not an offshore boat. For some, kayak fishing is about getting a fish on the line, then the war begins. It's all about pulling the fish out or the fish pulling you in, if you know what I mean. Remember dress to swim, rig to flip? In a twin troller, it's just plain not fair. The fish doesn't have a chance. You are on a stable platform, you have better fishing angles, I admit it. It's not fair for the fish. The fish is coming into the boat. You are not going into the water. Exercise. If you want a kayak for exercise, great. Buy a kayak. You're going to get a lot of exercise. Some people love paddling on the water. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But remember, this series is about fishing, not having six-pack abs. If you want six-pack abs, there's lots of videos about that. Come on, let's have a reality check. If you're paddling, you're not fishing. And if you're tired, at minimum, you're not fishing well. At worst, you're out on the water, tired. That could be dangerous in a kayak. If you like to exercise at the gym and fish on the water, buy a twin troller. The only exercise you're going to get in a twin troller is hauling in the fish. Stability. Kayak manufacturers like to talk about stability. I have never met anyone who says a kayak is stable. You can stand on it, maybe. That doesn't mean it's a stable platform. Some people can stand on logs. The twin troller is stable. You are not going to tip it over. If you do, I don't know how you are going to do it. Why try? And that's exactly what you would have to do. Try and tip it over. I've never seen it done before. Comfort. We haven't really discussed this in the series, but it's really a big deal. I guess comfort is relative. If you go to a store and sit in a kayak, you may say, hey, this is pretty comfortable. Before you buy that kayak, ask yourself how comfortable is it going to be after sitting in that position for 4 hours paddling. A twin troller is comfortable. I have fished 10 hours in a twin troller. Yes, 10 hours in one day non-stop. Standing up and stretching is easy to do. The seats are comfortable. The seating position is comfortable. What can I say? It's comfortable. I kid you not. My hands get tired before my back. And the best news is, I don't have to paddle back when my hands get tired. It's also worth mentioning, I may not be old, but I'm not that young either. So what's your decision? Have you made it yet? The question really isn't about which is better, kayak fishing or twin troller fishing. The question is, which is better for you? If I were to give you some advice, I'd simply say, be honest with yourself when answering. Live in reality, not fantasy. If you're looking for kayak fishing adventures, great, but be careful. You may be looking for twin troller fishing adventures. Know the difference. That's it. We hope you enjoyed our little series on kayak fishing versus twin troller fishing. So, which are you? Are you a kayak fisherman or a twin troller fisherman? Maybe you're both. For more information on the twin troller, go to twintroller.com or call 877-882-0099. Thanks for watching.